Sewing a seam. You're going to have two small pieces of material to sew together to sew a seam so that you can see what it looks like when you're creating your projects. The first thing you should have done is serged one edge, one long edge of each of your materials, and you can see we've already done that. And we talked about when you are doing a project, you want to make sure you're sewing right sides together so when you flip your project that the pretty sides are on the outside. So in order to do that, one of your pieces needs to be right side up. You can see this is the right side, that would be the wrong side. So right side facing up with this serge edge here on the left. And the other piece, which I have laid here, I'm actually going to flip so that they are right sides together. So this right side is going to go down. And I also have this serged edge here to the left. So both serge edges are right next to each other, and then I have wrong side fabric on front and back. So the next thing you're going to do is we'll pin the material. We talked about making sure that you have pins in your material every inch, inch and a half. Make sure that it stays together while you're sewing. It's tempting to not want to use pins because you think, oh, it's not that much, but the problem is the material will shift on you and you may not be able to keep it straight together. So the pins help you to do that. The next thing you do is you're ready to sew. So go ahead and turn on your machine and make sure that you have your top thread threaded through the machine and also your bobbin threaded. And we have ours threaded already. You can see that they're right here in the back. We're going to use the 5/8 inch seam, which we've already talked about. So you are going to make sure that the edge of your materials are on that 5/8 inch. And once you have it lined up, go ahead and put your presser foot down. You're going to take 2 or 3 stitches forward and then make sure that you hit the reverse button, and you're going to reverse to the edge of the material. This is your back stitching. Always practice to make sure that our material or our stitching doesn't come out at the edge of our fabric. So just continue sewing your straight seam. When you get to a pin, make sure you're stopping. Your needle's down, so I don't need to switch it down. Take my pin out and then continue. Making sure that I'm trying to keep this lined up with that 5/8 inch mark on my plate. One of the reasons that we take the pins out is that it can break the needle if they hit each other, so it's always a good idea just to make sure that they are not in the way while you're sewing your seam. Last pin. Oops, this one's kind of stuck, so I'll put my presser foot up to take it out. Presser foot back down. And then also a reason that we put our needle down is, as you can see, it's a lot more stable. I'm not going to lose the line that I have when I'm sewing if I have to put my presser foot up. Okay, I'm going to sew to the edge of the fabric or close to the edge. Make sure that I'm doing 4 or 5 back stitches and then finish my stitching to the edge. Needle up, presser foot up, and then just pull it out. I'm going to cut it off here. And this is your finished seam. So now what you'll do is you'll open up your fabric and you can see where the two meet, so where your seam is. And you are going to iron that with your edges open also. So I always like to just kind of press them with my hands to get them kind of open. So I'm going to open these two and make sure they're flat. Open this, and then I will take it over to the iron and I will go ahead and iron that seam down.
Okay.
When using an iron for sewing, you need to first make sure it's plugged in, and then it automatically turns on, so be careful, it'll be hot. You're going to put it between the 3 and the 4 on the dial. That should be hot enough. The iron always needs to be sitting up on the ironing board. Please do not leave it face down so that it can get hot. It is a potential fire hazard, so always sitting up when you're finished. You're going to take the material that you've sewn together You have the two pieces that you've sewn together and your seam is here. And I said earlier, I just kind of sometimes press open the seam by hand, but it doesn't stay down, so that's what the iron's for. So keeping your hand out of the way, you're just going to set the iron right on that seam and gently work your way back and forth a couple of times until you get the material to lay flat. Sometimes I'll turn it over and iron it also on the other side just to give it a little more pressure to keep it flat. Maybe one more time. And that is what it should look like when you're finished ironing.